Obinna, glad to have you on Tech Trends today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell me, what is your opinion of technology in a COVID era?
I think number one, technology now rises to the surface, right? So now everybody becomes more technology aware because if you're keeping distance, then technology helps you shorten that distance, either through communication, especially through communication, right? And then effectiveness, you see people ordering food, using technology. People, telemedicine is hot now. WhatsApp, Zoom, Facebook Messenger, Google Meet, all those are now popping up, right? And becoming much more top of mind for a lot of people.
So where does that leave countries that weren't prepared for the reality of today?
Well, I think the countries have to do a lot more catching up, right? So you now have to run twice as fast and then be more creative. Maybe you don't necessarily run in a straight line to chase everybody else that's been running for 10 minutes ahead of you. Maybe you run across the field. So I think, if we use something like Nigeria as an example, right, you can see the shortcomings where being able to continue children's education using technologies has become very challenging, right? So I would think, we've got to step backwards and first look at what exists that is efficient, right, that you can ride on and at least get to the most people while you try to build out some of the technology infrastructure that should actually be in place right now.
Yeah, because most of the brands, I mean, if a country like Nigeria was prepared for this, we probably will be thinking of how to earn foreign exchange from some of the services we are offering that is being offered today. But then, what's your word of encouragement for startups that have been building with little other support?
Well, I know you said words of encouragement, but maybe this might not come across as encouragement. But first, it's like help is not coming from anywhere. You have to figure it out yourself. Even the government doesn't have money right now, so and a lot of those funds, grants and all that are really going to dry up. And even if the money is available, a lot of people will still be focused on, first of all, keeping the office running, right? So I think for me, for startups, I think the main thing is really to step back for a minute and try to anticipate what a post-COVID era would look like.
But I like to know, obviously some startups will have to pivot to certain kind of area, but what industries would you place your bet on post-COVID?
In which environment though?
Nigeria.
Nigeria, you want healthcare? I think everybody now sees and understands how terrible the healthcare situation is. And I think those startups that will be able to come in and use technology to close the gap, so for example, today, I think telemedicine has a big chance in Nigeria, right? Maybe not as broad as, one would expect, but I think, there are a lot of people who would now want to sit at home and be able to have proper consultations with their doctors, The other thing I think would also be good would be logistics. I think the logistics market in Nigeria is still very shallow. It's not as deep as it should be, especially on the consumer side. So if you look at food delivery, right, I've seen some people having conversations around, e-commerce in the US versus say e-commerce in Nigeria. And you looked at, in the US, when they shut down, the e-commerce companies were given the essential services label and they were able to operate. And so you had the food delivery companies, Amazon and all that, doing very well in this pandemic because everybody is staying home. In Nigeria, that necessary infrastructure doesn't really exist. And then secondly, the consumers are not that much aware of, the companies themselves, to be able to take advantage of that. But I think, when you have the previous, what's their name? Opay and Max and all those other guys, if they can repurpose and create more awareness about services that they can offer to the average person, that helps reduce the the necessity for people to interact with themselves to get things done. I think there's a big opportunity there.
All right, you are a data expert, someone who does a lot of things around data. How important is data in the post-COVID world?
Data is very important pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID, because I mean, if you look at look at Nigeria, right? You look at an example, and they come in and they tell you, I mean, the humanitarian affairs minister will say, we're giving out, 31 million in this state or whatever. And people are asking, who are you giving it to? And the truth is, nobody knows, right? They say they have a list and all that, but truly, those kind of things should not be proprietary, right? I mean, it's something like a database should be accessible, even if it's not it can be anonymized, right? I should be able to look at if a database exists and you say, let me pick out a state, I should be able to say how many of them are under the age of 18. How many are between 40 and 45? Those kind of things should not be hidden. But because you don't have the data readily available, there's not a lot of transparency. Because you don't have a lot of transparency, then there's a lot of mistrust, right? So even from a government standpoint, you can see how just even having data and sharing the data, at least helps reduce the tension within the populace. But on its own, if you look at data, for what it does, which is informed decisions, right? When you're able to come in and say, okay, we want to share palliatives to the older population, right, or to the vulnerable population. How do you do it? What typically happens is people come out and say, okay, I know this person that lives down the road, right, and then I give it to you, and then you go give it to the person. Again, it creates a lot of inefficiencies. On the external side, even people who want to help need transparency, right? There have been a lot of efforts to recruit the diaspora to support efforts in Nigeria. A lot of times, most people don't want to participate because there's no transparency. It's like, if I donate my money, how am I sure it's not going into somebody's pocket, right? So even if you just have a map that shows these are the places that need help, this is where the money is going, and you can do a breakdown by how the money was spent and all that. Again, data in this case leads information, which leads to lower mistrust and all that. So just even from a communication standpoint, which during this pandemic period, right, has become one of the key things, right? Communication is key. We see a lot of misinformation flying around. Now, if you go post-COVID, you now realize that we don't even know what's going on. So, for example, healthcare. When they started shutting down the borders, people realized that we didn't know how many ventilators were in Nigeria, right? And if you don't know how many ventilators are in your country, then how can you ask for help, right? Do you say, I have 2 and I need 10, or do I have, I think, I know a company or a group went out and made an effort to go around the states to count them. Now, but those are the kind of things that should be readily available, right? How many hospitals, how many clinics, how many nurses, how many, if we look at so we take the states with the highest number of COVID cases, Kano and Lagos, right? How many hospitals are there? How many experts are there? How many herbal doctors are even there? We have none of this, So again, it's like, without data, you're just running around like a chicken with his head cut off, right?
I mean, the reality is that we've got to fix the country. I mean, this is a very good opportunity, and technology sort of gives us that opportunity when we fuse it with innovation, education. Let's just hope that someone is listening among the policymakers. For the startups, I think the startups are trying to build, and they just need support. What would be your final word in this moment?
I'll say, look, no matter what it is, we're all in it together, right? I mean, I agree, the policymakers, the leaders, they are at the top and they have their own responsibilities and they're expected to take us forward. But we too have our own responsibilities, right? We need to also learn who to hold accountable and when to hold people accountable. Everything does not end with one person, right? You look around yourself, and this is again going back to data. If you look around yourself, you need to be able to figure out, for the issues you are facing, who is meant to be accountable, and figure out how to hold that person accountable. Everything doesn't stop with Buhari, right? We run a federal system, and the Constitution gives the rights. We run a representative government, and we need to learn how to figure out who our representatives are and hold them accountable to make sure that they're delivering what we expect them to deliver.
Obi, I want to thank you for being with me on the program today, and please stay safe, and I wish you all the very best.
Thanks, and you too.